I am Matěj Skalický and this is Czech Radio News Podcast Vinohradská 12. Wounds left to heal, painful, deep and complicated. It seems like everyone in Israel knows someone whose brother or daughter was killed or whose neighbor or friend was kidnapped. How to deal with it? My questions for Tali Levanon, a CEO of Israel Trauma Coalition. It's Tuesday, November 14th. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about the situation in Israel right now. I heard some security experts and journalists comparing the September 11th for Americans and October 7th for Israelis. So how deep Hamas cut in Israeli soul on that day?
Well, I think one part of your question leads to the next one. The equivalent of what happened in 9/11 in Israel would be about 40,000 people. If you take the numbers of the citizens in the States and the citizens in Israel. So that answers your second question, how deep the pain and the grief throughout the country is. We are a country of 9 million people, and we are a very close community, and people know many people, and I don't think you will find a family in Israel who doesn't know somebody who was there. And so the impact is a very big impact. And I will say also that what we see is that when you're talking about the cut on the Israeli soul, is that what happened on the 7th of October really eroded many basic assumptions that we have about the home being a safe place, parents being safe and they will take care of me. And so it has a very big impact on children and families and so on.
Mm-hmm. So many people right now in Israel don't feel that their homes are safe anymore?
So I will divide the people of Israel into those who live in the south of the country, 0 to 40 kilometers from the border, or even 0 to 7 kilometers from the border. And these are communities that have been exposed to rockets for about 20 years, with a lot of wars and escalations and a lot of Qassam shooting, and they are already very wary and very burnt out from the situation. And when the event happened on the 7th of October, almost 95% of these people were evacuated from their homes and are currently living in 300 hotels through the country. And then there is the rest of the country that is being exposed through media, through knowing somebody who was there, through soldiers actually, or being now called to the army. And so I will divide it into the people according to exposure, to the people who are very highly exposed and to those who are exposed, but not directly.
Your organization helped people, and you helped people who were attacked by the terrorists of Hamas on the October 7th. What kind of help did you provide them?
So first of all, we are also very deeply affected, and it was really difficult in this case to respond. I mean, we did respond. We are all professionals, but still it was a very, very painful day and still is. But my organization, the Israel Trauma Coalition, deals with response and preparedness. And so we are part of the communities. We've been part of the communities for many years. We are working with them to be able to provide better care, whether it's therapy, whether it's working with teams, and we've been under stress. And so when on October 7th, actually, most of the mayors in the south evacuated their communities, and we began working with them on providing direct care and taking care of the well-being and the trauma of the people who found themselves with a plastic bag evacuating their home in 10 minutes and running for security. And so there is what we do is provide first emotional aid and direct care, and working with the teams and working with families and working with children in many ways, not only therapy, but also providing a system where nonverbal interventions are held, such as art therapy and music therapy and so on. At the beginning, you need to understand when the people are in a hotel, it is very difficult to have even therapy with a psychologist, because there are no rooms. There's only the lobby where everybody is going in and out, and everything was very chaotic at the beginning. And now slowly we're beginning to find our pace and stabilize the way services are being provided.
And can you tell me who was and who is mostly in need right now?
I will go back to the exposure. The exposure of the people who are living in the south was extremely, I wouldn't even call it extremely high, because this is beyond anything we never could have imagined. So who is in need? The people who were hiding in the shelter for 30 hours, the families who were, some members were kidnapped, some members were killed, some members were wounded. The teams who defended their communities are very much in need. The police force, where many policemen were killed, are very much in need. So I feel as the director of the Israel Trauma Coalition, and also as a citizen, sometimes that when you touch, whatever you touch is very much in pain.
I have to say, our daughters, to me, they were the biggest heroes of the day. Our two daughters and many, many other children in Kibbutz Nachal Oz that day listened to their parents and stayed silent and did not cry and did not make any noises. Just stayed there silently, waiting for someone to come and save them.
It's like a horror movie to me. It was the scariest thing that ever happened in my life.
Can you imagine, just imagine your friends, your family, the people that you love, sitting for 36 hours and hearing people getting killed? There were bodies all over the street here. My office, there were bodies around my freaking office. How am I supposed to go back to work?
Can you explain to me, how do you work with those people? How to work with grieving people who lost their relatives on October 7th?
So when you work with the grief, one of the first things that you need to do is to be there for the other person and to acknowledge the pain and not to expect a change immediately, because people are still processing what has happened. And also, I will say that for some families, they still have no notice that their loved one is dead. They don't know if he was killed or kidnapped. And so the process of grieving is even more complicated in that case. But where people are grieving, first of all, there is a big support in the communities here. There is a Jewish custom to come and visit the family for the first week. Mm-hmm. But to give you an example, we have one community where there were 400 people in the community, out of which 105 were killed. So I don't know if you can imagine, a third of the village was killed. And they know each other and they live together for many years. And so when you look at it like this is really a lot, and people went from one funeral to another. But the process is actually, as I'm saying this even as a therapist, is to be there and be a bridge for the people who feel very broken to the change that will eventually come.
Mm-hmm. It has to be very hard for psychologists and psychotherapists as well.
Very.
Because you have to listen to all these traumatizing stories people tell you.
It is extremely difficult for therapists, and you also need to understand that most of the therapists are part of the same reality. They are parents. We have one therapist who was murdered, one was kidnapped, another husband was killed as well. They are part of the community and they experience the same thing, and they need to take the role back and sit with people and say, I'm here to help you. So that is also very difficult. But it is extremely difficult to listen to the stories and actually to be some sort of a container for the pain that the people are expressing. And this is why we really are trying to invest a lot of thought and resources on how to help the therapist through this, because it is very difficult. So we have groups for therapists and we have supervision, and we bring in people for the therapists to talk to, and some of the therapists are also in therapy.
Can you please tell me one or two stories just to give me a sense of what you're listening to?
One of our therapists was hiding in the safe room for 17 hours, and she had the phone with her, and she was communicating her fear to our team, saying that she knows she's in the safe room, she hears the shots, she's very afraid. It was, I can't even find the words to say how impossible it was to listen to her and to support her and not to give, false hope it will be okay. It was a very frightening experience. The other one is that in one of the communities, the mayor was shot and killed, and his son was shot and killed, and the whole community was, almost was trying to find the balance of, coping with this. And we have families who lost 7 members. These are stories that you cannot even grasp because this is not usual. So communities who go, the houses, many of the houses are completely burnt down or shot at. And so the thought of not having a home anymore is extremely, takes the connection from past to future, makes it very difficult.
And when do you listen to those stories? Is it possible, or is it even helpful to not only listen, but also maybe hug those people?
Well, hugging is very important. I'm serious. I mean, it is extremely important. You need to be very careful not to go into the space of the other person. You need to ask permission. But many of the people, and I'm saying this also as a therapist, will only need the hug. They will only need to feel that they are being hugged, that they are being seen, they are being acknowledged. And, sometimes you cannot change the reality, but you can change maybe the feeling that these people are not very much alone. They feel alone, but they are part of a system of care, and that we really care about them, and we do. Mm-hmm. So hugs are really important.
Tali, I have to ask you, the whole world's watching the situation regarding the hostages that are being held by Hamas terrorists in the tunnels underneath the Gaza. Mm-hmm. Are you in a contact with families of hostages?
Yes, they are part of the community that we work with. Also, even if I wasn't in my position, the issue of the hostages and the tents that they created, and they're reaching out to the Israeli people asking for help is always in front of us. But we live in a country where there is much misinformation or lack of understanding where we are going. There is a war going on. Many men are recruited to the army, and there are many questions about where the people are, what will happen. And so the general anxiety is, of course, connected to their own very deep anxiety and very deep pain and not having any information. And as I said before, some families lost more than one person, and when, of course, many are young children, so it makes it very difficult. But all you need to do at the moment, there is not much to do except support them, in this trial of waiting to hear something.
I see her in my mind, but then my mind keeps wandering to where does she lie down? Where does she put her head? Is she eating? Is she sleeping? Does she have water? Does she have fresh air? Does she have air at all? With this in mind.
Well, picture your own mother, and then picture her being told there are only 2 options. You are either dead, or you had your arm blown off and were kidnapped by gunpoint into Gaza and no one knows where you are, or if you bled to death in that pickup truck, or if you died yesterday, or if you died 5 minutes ago.
I want to ask of Hamas, don't hurt them. Don't hurt little children, don't hurt women. If you want me instead, I'm willing to come.
Bring them home now! Bring them home!
Do you feel, from what you know, what they told you, that their voices are being heard by the Israeli government?
I'm sure their voices are being heard. I am not sure the government has solutions. And in this case, you want to see your loved one back in your arms. And so even if they have information, it makes a big difference, but it doesn't change the fact that they do not know what's happening, where the people are, if they are alive or not, who is taking care of the babies, who is taking care of the older people. You know, we have people there 85 and so on. And so it is a very difficult situation. Even that is not, it's an understatement. It's extremely difficult. And the government is dealing with the political side.
Several weeks have passed since the attacks on October 7th. How fragile is the Israeli society right now?
I think it's very fragile, very vulnerable. I'm trying, even as a professional, I'm trying to find the voice of hope, but it is very difficult. I hope that we will see the hostages here, and that will make a big difference to the morale of the Israeli people. But at the moment, people feel on one hand that we need to be together, we need to cope with this, we are resilient, we're a strong people, but on the other hand, everybody feels a lot of pain, and maybe that will also take time.
Do you think that it will be months or years? How long will it take for Israeli society to recover, if ever?
I don't know what you mean by recover. I think this will always be with us. It will be with the next generation. I'm saying we are dealing with a multi-generational issue. It will not pass within a year. We will always carry it. The next generation will carry it as well. When you speak of recovery, then recovery has a few parts. One of them is functioning, going back to work and to school. In many places in Israel, there is still no school. Many people are home. You're speaking of loving again and being able to be in a good relationship with other people. And that, is a process that people are slowly looking for. Recovery means, not being afraid to drive in the car to Tel Aviv, which we are because there are rockets. And so there will be much more recovery when the country is safe again. But the pain will be carried.
And if the recovery isn't the right word, can you find one to better describe the whole healing process?
I believe that being resilient is also knowing that you are vulnerable. People who know that are stronger because they know that they carry pain and they carry bad experiences, but they still cope. And I think in that sense, we are a very resilient community or a country because we know that we will cope. We know that we will be in a better place, like every grieving process, but we know we will be in a better place. And it's okay now to say that it's very painful, but it will not be the same in a year. And really, like a grieving process, people change and they move on, and we will be a different country. And I hope it will be a better country.
So it will take time.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that we could talk about it, and thank you very much again for your time and for your answers.
Thank you.
And that's all for today. I spoke with Tali Levanon, the CEO of Israel Trauma Coalition. Thank you for listening.